All right, welcome everybody to our first Comparative Education International Development Alumni Career Panel. We're really excited to have everybody here today.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Is this social anthropology?
All right, sorry about that. We had a slight delay. So we're going to pick it back up here. Excited to have our panelists here today. And what really is a celebration. So our community's been running for about 4 years now. And now we've got people landing in different opportunities and careers. So we're excited to come here, celebrate, and share the achievements of CEID alumni. Our panel today is really a space for panelists to share their career journey, advice and challenges, and for students and other interested to ask questions related to careers and really start to network across cohorts. So our structure today, we'll have a facilitated panel discussion. I'll kind of be asking a question, it will be open, I'll take the slides down, I'll ask all panelists to set their screens up, and we'll have our conversation. And then we'll have hopefully 15-20 minutes of open questions for anybody in the room with me today or online. So I'd like to go around and introduce our panelists for today. So I'm going to give an introduction and then I'll take these slides down and everybody will be on screen. So starting off, we've got Alex Baugh, who's a data analyst at the UK Cabinet Office, graduated from CEID in 2020. Joining him in the same class was Maria-Rafaela Kaldi, who's currently an education policy and research consultant at the Global Education Monitoring Report in UNESCO. 1 year later, Shirley graduated in CEID class of 2021, and she is now an executive officer of the admissions office at the University of Hong Kong. And our most recent graduate, Mengqi, is now an assistant lecturer in primary education faculty at Shijiazhuang Preschool Teachers College. So welcome all four of you. I'm really glad you can make it to what is the first of, I hope, many alumni career panels in the future. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And invite all panelists to turn their camera on if you can and join us. So excellent. There we go. Wonderful. It's wonderful to have all four of you here. It's been a while since I've seen some of you. So always good to see you and chat with you. I want to start with this really basic question, helping people understand the variety of opportunities in CEID. You just explain a little bit about what you're currently doing. So what's your current position? What do you do in that position? Just a minute or two, help us out. And we're going to go with our most recent graduate first. So Mengqi, can you share a little bit about what your current position is and what you do in that position? So Mengqi, it's over to you. Okay, we'll try to come back there. Shirley, can you jump in? What are you currently up to?
Currently, I am in Hong Kong, the University of Hong Kong, and I'm working as an executive officer at the undergraduate admissions office. And my work mainly revolves around the international student recruitment, including assessing their profiles and their scores against the requirements, and also understanding the international curriculum and examinations and testings across different countries or regions, and also sometimes coordinating with admissions interviews, and also we have to do some marketing and outreach in particular countries and regions as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Shirley. Mengqi, I'm going to try to come back to you now. Can you share a little bit about what you're currently doing?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, wonderful.
Now I work as an assistant lecturer in primary education faculty at Shijiazhuang Preschool Teachers College and my main responsibility is to teach the course primary education. And at the same time, I also manage 2 classes of student, and I'm responsible for student management for at least 3 years.
Mengqi, what level of students are you working with?
It's similar to university levels, which is almost all the students are over 18.
Excellent, great, thank you. Maria, what are you up to?
Hi from me as well. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. So I'm working as a education policy and research consultant at the Global Education Monitoring Report of UNESCO. So for those not familiar, it's an editorially independent report published by UNESCO that broadly monitors countries' progress towards the achievement of SDG 4. So what I do there is essentially, it's a primarily research and writing role. I'm responsible for drafting one of the chapters for the next report on technology and education. I'm also working on the next regional report in Southeast Asia, again, research and writing, and I'm also helping them draft education country profiles that are relevant to the themes of each report. So we look at national strategies, policies, regulations on how different countries deal with issues that are related to the global report. So yes, that's what I'm doing.
Thanks, Maria. I know the technology report just had a launch date set, I think in July. So congrats on working on that. Alex, about yourself.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Awesome to be here. So I'm currently working as a data analyst within the UK Cabinet Office, which is the central government office of the UK, based at 70 Whitehall in the middle of London. Our job, well, the team I'm in is called the National Situation Centre, which has overall responsibility for data during crisis. So we're the central data hub. So whenever there's a national security crisis, everything from small flooding to the big scary stuff no one ever wants to think about, that's what we're responsible for, collecting that data, analysing it so that hopefully the ministers use it as they should and make the correct decisions, which sometimes does not happen. And that's basically me.
Thanks, Alex. I know when I asked people to share their organization, you couldn't quite share that, so I just shared the BBC article. You shared with me about what your organization is, a little bit more inside of kind of very restrictive, I guess, team that you work on. So interesting, wonderful to have you. So I'm going to go back to Maria and Alex to start with. You've had a little more time from your master's to your current position. Wondering, Maria, can you share a little bit about how did you get from completing your dissertation to your current position? So what was the opportunities like, or the challenges? Share a little bit more about that path.
Yes, so I would say my path was not very in the traditional senses, in the sense that I mean, my dissertation had very much to do with the position that I'm in now and the position that I was in before I joined GM. And it wasn't the traditional path in the sense that I didn't apply for either of these positions. It really was out of a very good recommendation that I got. And because of the dissertation that I wrote while I was at CEID, that was very relevant to both of these positions. So to just explain, the first position that I had after I completed my dissertation was in a network, the Privatization in Education and Human Rights Consortium, that they work to promote free public education worldwide and respond to the challenges posed by private actors in education. So my dissertation was very relevant with that. I wrote my dissertation on low-fee private schools and the rapid growth of private actors in education. And it was through Will here, our great coordinator for CEID, that he connected me with the coordinator of this network, because he knew I was writing something very similar to what they were working on. And they were luckily during that time, I think it was about 2 months after I had completed my degree. They were looking for someone to help them co-organize their conference and with some weekly news briefs. So I joined in that way. So essentially, I was introduced by Will to the coordinator of this network, which was so exciting for me because it was so relevant to what I had studied and what I had done in my dissertation. And then again, I think it was about 3 months after my degree, which is when I got the current role that I'm in. So I've been at the GM since November 2020. So it was about 3 months after my dissertation when I finished CID, which again was related to my dissertation and related to a very good recommendation. And I would also say a big element of luck as well here, because while I was writing my dissertation, which I actually found this unlucky at the time, but the GM was writing the report on non-state actors in education, which was very relevant to my dissertation. And funnily enough, I did find that unlucky when I was writing my dissertation, because I was like, oh no, like I want this report. I think it's so relevant for what I'm writing. But what ended up happening is that it was actually very lucky, because my dissertation supervisor, she used to work at GM. And when I completed my dissertation, she contacted them and she told them, because she knew them and she used to work there, and she knew they were working on a very relevant topic. And essentially she told them that, yeah, I have a student that completed this master's dissertation. I think it's very relevant for your current work on non-state actors. She shared the dissertation and she introduced me informally to team members. And essentially, I think it was a month after that I got contacted by them because they needed some help with some research that was very relevant. So that's how I got the position. So it was very much, yes, dissertation, thematic knowledge that I had, a great elements of luck, and a very good recommendation, which I really saw firsthand when it goes a very long way. And yeah, thanks a lot to Will again and Joanna, my supervisor, for that.
Thanks, Maria. Always excited to see people being able to really use their dissertation towards their future. So glad to see that happened here. Alex, I know you had a slightly different path with lots of different opportunities. Can you share a little bit about your journey?
I can. Mine definitely didn't come from my dissertation though, well, so apologies for that. So I did my dissertation, graduated from Edinburgh, and then spent 6 months applying for jobs. And it's not easy. Applying for jobs, applying for internships within UN organisations, international humanitarian, local humanitarian. Finally, something came up within UNICEF, an organisation called Education Cannot Wait, which some of you may know I've presented on before. Spent 6 months working there, which was awesome. They dealt with making sure that during a crisis that countries had access to money as quickly as possible so that the continuity of education could be continued. And that was the main focus. We also had other focuses, but that was really cool. So I was working on the data side of that, collecting the data, making sure that our money was being well spent, making sure that it was impacting the right amount of students, they were spending the right amount on each student, which was really interesting during COVID because everything got changed, which is when I took the role up just after COVID. So that was quite cool. Unfortunately, with the UN, you can only intern for so long, and then you have to leave. And then Will actually gave me a tip, so back to Will again, about a job very similar to what I was doing with the World Bank, with the Global Partnership for Education. So again, applied for that, luckily enough, got it, and doing pretty much the exact same thing with that job, analysing education projects, but over a much broader breadth of countries, much more money, probably about 10 times as much money per country. So that was really cool to see the difference between small grants that focus on a very niche part of education to massive grants that covered everything. And then that came to an end because reports get written and reports are over. So that finished, and I got this job on the UK's graduate scheme for the government, where I got placed into a crisis team, which is perfect for what I wanted. And I've been here since September, and then in, I think it's December, I get rotated to a different department doing something different for next year. That's sort of my journey. Very different to Maria's. I went through a lot of applications. I think I put in 254 applications in total eventually before I got my 2 roles. So yeah, very different.
Alex, I think some people might say 254 is a lot. And so
Yeah.
Can you talk about kind of either what you're doing during that time to kind of, try to make yourself more marketable, or some of the things you did to keep your optimism going during that time?
Yeah, definitely not easy. Probably the hardest time I've probably had ever. I set myself a goal of 3 applications a week, and sometimes I did more than that, and often I did quite a lot less than that. So just setting that goal and making a list of the applications you wanted to apply for, making sure you got the due dates, which with the UN, by the way, they tend to change. They say they're open until next month, and then suddenly they close when you come and apply for them. So making sure that list and just ticking them off and just keep going and just keep going. I did volunteer with the UN House Scotland, which you may have contact with briefly, until I got the internship, and I just couldn't. I didn't have the time. UN internships are fairly intense, and they demand a lot of your time. So that sort of finished when I took that job.
Thanks, Alex. Shirley, can you talk a little bit about how you ended up at the University of Hong Kong?
Yes, so I would say my experience is also quite different to the others as well. I wanted to find a place with both international but also Chinese culture, and which is close to home. So, and I'm from Beijing, and so I think Hong Kong is a good place for this. And I actually started working in July, where it was towards the end of completing my dissertation. But I was really grateful that my supervisor and my peers were very flexible and supportive about the meeting session times, which enabled me to have the meeting sessions after my work. And yeah, so yeah, that's the only job I actually applied for, because I flew back from Edinburgh to Hong Kong and I was in quarantine for a week. And during my quarantine, I started to look for internships or work positions, and that's the one I applied for. And I thought to give it a try, and also to know more about the University of Hong Kong. And I have studied about education policies and curriculums in some of the courses I took in my master's degree. I think they have definitely aided me in the work that I do here and in understanding the curriculums from each different countries. Yeah.
Thanks, Shirley. I want to ask a follow-up question for you.
Mhm.
I know some of our students currently are, there's kind of 2 paths. Some are right now looking for job opportunities, and some are very much like, I'm going to get my dissertation done, and then I'll worry about it. You were looking while you were working on your dissertation. Can you talk about what the challenges were with that, and whether or not you might encourage people to do that?
I wouldn't encourage people to do that, because it was definitely very challenging. And in the end, towards the very last 2 weeks of the submission time, I actually had to take a few days off from my work because I need to focus on getting the dissertation done. But yeah, like I think I was being a bit anxious about getting a job, or about the plannings after graduation and after completing the dissertation. So I started this whole thing too early. And if I was going to give advice to the other student, as I would say, to focus on completing one thing first.
Thanks, Shirley. Mengqi, so you completed your degree this last August, and love to hear about how you kind of quickly landed a position. So, Mengqi, it's over to you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm actually finished my dissertation in August 2021, and I returned back to China in 2021 October. And I think the first challenge and the biggest challenge I met was what kind of job I really want to do. So it sounds quite similar, but it's difficult for me. So I tried a lot. Like for example, I tried to submit resumes to foreign enterprises, which is not related to education field. But ultimately, what motivated me to make up my mind to work in education field was my interest and my future career plan. Because I'm really interested in education policy and political of education, and my dissertation was also focuses on this point. So at the very beginning, I'm looking for the job about researching education policy. But when I go back to China and search for those kinds of recruitment positions, I found all of them requires at least 3 years experiences of teaching, like in schools or in college or in universities. So I think if I would like to do research education policy in the future, so maybe getting a job in school or in college is a good choice for me for now. So when I decided what kind of job I would like to do, and getting a job is less difficult, because recent years lots of college are recruiting lecturers in quite large quantities. So getting a job, it's not hard. For me, what is hard or what is difficult is to make a choice what kind of job I would like to do.
Excellent. I think that's interesting to hear about, knowing the steps you need and what you need to do to be qualified for the ultimate job you want to do, and
Yes.
trying to find that position. So very nice. Very nice. Thank you. I want to ask one more question before I open it up. This is to everybody. I know, so in this work, sometimes there are consultancy or part-time or, short-term contracts, and I know some of you have jumped on those before. Can you talk about how this could be beneficial, but also some of the challenges around that as well? Any thoughts on short terms? And Alex, I'm going to start with you because I know you've had more experience, but then others please jump in about those, or kind of the value of internships as well if you've had those.
Yeah, no worries. I can jump in on that one. So yeah, the short-term contracts, the internships, all are not very conducive for long-term stability. Most of the entry-level jobs within the UN and international organisations will require 2 years of experience, which then questions whether they're entry-level jobs. They obviously aren't, but that's what they require. So the only path in is through internships, is through connections, is who you know rather than what you know. So getting the internships is essential. So anyone that's currently got the time, start applying. Especially the UN ones, they take 6 months to even look at your application. So start applying now. And the part that I guess sucks the most about the short-term contracts, most of them can't be renewed because of regulations within the organisation. And even when you do get them, within a month of getting them, because it takes so long to get responses for your next one, you're already applying. So you're trying to work, you're trying to do it all the best you can, but you're also thinking, hang on, if I put everything into my work, I can't apply for the next job. So in 6 months, I'm going to be unemployed again. So you have to sort of balance putting everything into your work, which you can't do because you need to apply for the next job. So it's a really awkward situation, and for most of them, a lot of the internships, they don't pay, which I think is ridiculous as well. Luckily, mine did with UNICEF. UNICEF and the World Food Organization do pay. I don't know of any other UN ones that do.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Anybody else want to talk, come in on kind of short-term consultancy internship experiences, and whether or not you have any insights on them, they're good or bad to explore? Okay. All right, well, I'm going to open up then to general questions. So I'll try to keep track of the chat as well, but I also want people in the room. So questions for panelists. I can keep asking them, but I think they'd come better from you. Who's got a question? Okay. All right, when you ask a question, please raise your hand. Make sure I've got myself on unmuted first, so give me a second. So, and introduce yourself. All right, so over to you.
Hi, can you hear me okay? I think, yeah, perfect. I'm Katya. Thank you so much for all your stories. It's very interesting to hear and very insightful also. I just wondered if, so you kind of touched a little bit upon it, but did you find out what you wanted to do as you were working, or did you already know what you wanted? Or sort of when you were, for example, Maria, when you were doing your dissertation, was that something you knew you wanted to do and then you knew you wanted to keep working with that, or did it just sort of happen that you continued on as you, or how that kind of came about? Because I think I'm at a stage where like I have very vague ideas, but I wonder if maybe I'm a bit too idealistic, thinking, oh, I should know what I want to do, whereas maybe it's more of a through the experience. So I just wondered if you had anything to say about that.
Thanks, Katya. Yeah, Maria, why don't you jump in?
Yes, thanks for your question. It's an interesting one because for me, when I joined and I was studying CID, I was very interested in this field in general, but I didn't know the specific area of non-state actors that I was specifically interested in. I actually discovered it while I was studying my degree. So I was when I started studying, I realized that I was very passionate with this area. I really found the courses very interesting, and I was exploring different areas. And at one point, I think it was the second semester, I don't remember when it was exactly, but Will had organized a talk with who ended up to being my dissertation supervisor, Joanna Horma. She works in this area on low-fee private schools. She's a specialist in this area for many, many years. And she did her presentation. I listened and I found it very, very interesting what she was talking about. So I talked with Will and I told him that I'd like to do my next project. I think it was an assignment that we had for CID on this topic specifically. I was really interested in it. So I ended up doing my assignment on this topic, and I realized that there was just so much more to explore and how much I really found it so interesting. I kept reading more and more about it, and I decided eventually that I wanted to do my dissertation on it and explore it further. So that's how I ended up finding out that I was really interested in this specific area within education and development. And after I finished, I realized I want to do a PhD, I want to do more. Like I was generally like very, very interested in it. And when I started working afterwards at the network that I told you about before, the Privatization, Education and Human Rights Consortium, I just got really inspired and I realized that, yeah, this is definitely an area that I want to work in more. And I'm also personally very interested in research. I'm very academic kind of oriented. I might want to do a PhD as well. So it was really, yeah, it fit really well for me, which I realize again, like it's very lucky in my case, my path. I know a lot of people, I mean, it's very difficult. So I was lucky in that sense, but yeah, I found it essentially in my case through while I was studying.
Thanks, Maria. Anybody else want to jump in on when did you know that this was the area you wanted to work in?
I can jump in with a slightly different answer, I guess, if that's works. To add on to Maria's conversation, we were in the same year at Edinburgh. We walked back from lectures. We only lived a few minutes down the road from each other. And I think in the third year, Marie managed to fit low-fee private schools into every single assignment, somehow, shape or form, that she was doing. But that's slightly different. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Marie would probably back me up on this. I was definitely data orientated whilst I was at uni, and more quantitative than qualitative. So I ended up applying for a lot of data jobs, what's known in the humanitarian field as meal or monitoring and evaluation jobs. And that's where that came from. So as soon as I got one, I jumped on it as soon as I could, basically. So, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be working with data.
Thanks, Alex. Shirley or Mengqi, did you both know you wanted to be in higher ed?
No, I wanted to be in school, but my most preferable setting was like in international schools. But then I realized that it often requires more experience and more teaching relevant licensures or certificates, and I think that will be something I want to explore after this position. But I knew I wanted to explore Hong Kong, this city, so that's why it led me to here. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Shirley. Mengqi, you want to add anything?
I'm actually still exploring myself because when I was doing my master degree, I'm also want to do a PhD, and now I work in a college, and my college has encouraged lecturers to do a PhD to meet the teaching. So I'm still exploring.
No, it's a really good point, Mengqi. It'd be interesting to have this panel back in 10 years and think about what would have happened in the next 10 years, because it is still very, very early. Remember, I'm probably on my 3rd or 4th career right now, so lots of changes. Okay, while I'm waiting for another question in the room, Alex, we got a question from Rebecca online for you. It says a lot of young positions, for my case, it is UNESCO, requires a master's degree. Is it okay if we apply now while we're studying in the master's program?
Absolutely. For most of them, it's absolutely fine to apply when you're studying. In fact, there's a time limit. Some of them are 1 year, some of them are 2 years after you graduate. You're no longer eligible for internships. So if you need the 2 years before you get a job, which is the requirement for most jobs, you need to be applying and you need to get the internships as quick as possible so you can rack up those 2 years before you then can apply for the proper jobs that actually pay the money. So yeah, start applying now. The internship I got, I didn't actually get the first time around. I applied, I didn't make the cut. They were recruiting 7 interns. They interviewed 20. I was the only one that emailed the day after saying thank you for the interview, thank you for responding. And then someone dropped out, and because I was the only one that followed up with an email, they emailed me to see if I wanted it. So definitely apply when you get the interviews, follow up with them, even if you're unsuccessful. You never know who will drop out. Because they're unpaid, people are dropping out all the time. So yeah, just for reference, I don't know what it is now. Just after COVID, when we were applying, the acceptance rate for internships into the UN was 1 in 1,000. So for every 1,000 applicants, there was 1 job. So start applying for lots now.
Thanks, Alex. Rebecca has a quick follow-up. We're thinking about staff positions at UNESCO that require masters, maybe not research positions. And Maria, you can jump in here as well if you've got any insight. Thoughts about staff positions at UNESCO requiring a master's, and should people pursue those while they're still finishing their master's?
So I work as a consultant now. I know generally that I would say it depends on the position. Usually staff positions specifically where I work at GM, they usually require more experience. So for me, I feel as though it was a bit more difficult to get a staff position there. And what I'm seeing generally now that I've been working there for 2.5 years, the easiest way in the specific place that I work, again, in GM, because again, GM is quite editorial independent. It's under UNESCO, but it's not exactly UNESCO. The team that I'm working in, I've noticed that staff positions tend to be a bit more difficult if you have less experience. If you have less experience, usually the consultancies sometimes are a bit easier to get. And also what Alex was saying now, the follow-ups are really, really important. Like I've seen this within my team that they had published for a position, and then our supervisor was saying, oh, but like I heard back from this one applicant. She was very passionate. She got back to us. She followed up on the application and she seems very passionate. And that was really what got her interested, like our supervisor with this. So these follow-ups are really crucial, not just sending out the application and then leaving it. Like I think it's really, really important. Reaching out to people, following up, showing your interest, showing your passion. At least they know your name, and you never know. One of the people that actually work with us now, she had applied for the position, I think like months ago. She never heard back. She had followed up several times, and then they had her name in the system and they contacted her after several months because they knew she was really interested, and they told her a position has opened up now. So you really never know, and follow-ups already key.
Perfect. Thanks, Maria. I'll open up for other questions. Other questions, specific or general questions for our alumni. Okay. All right, so let's go to a final set of questions. Thinking about, you're a couple years ahead of current students in the room here. What recommendations would you give them, either on the job search, on their skills they be looking to obtain? Thinking about sitting at the end of second semester for you, what suggestions would you give for students at this stage in their job search and future? So, Shirley, let's start with you this time. What advice do you have for current students? Final bits of advice and wisdom.
I would say from my experience, at this time of the semester, it's a great time to be thinking about what would you like to be and what would you want to do for your future careers. But maybe, and definitely have like some research and get things started. You can work on a draft of your resume and those things like preparations, but don't need to rush to actually get in the job and get started before you have fully completed your master's program, the journey. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Shirley. Alex, how about you? What are your last bits of wisdom?
Definitely networking, getting on LinkedIn, really important, making sure your profile is as full as possible, that you're liking, that you're retweeting, or whatever you do on LinkedIn. I don't even know what it's called, but you're sending tweets that you like, commenting, making contacts. There's lots of really good recruiters out there that post like 100 jobs a day in the development field, all on different things. Start following them, and that's where I found the UNICEF link was through one of them. So do that now. I am being a bit hypocritical here. I've had to close down all my social medias and lock them all up since I've taken my new job because of the security around it. So I can't actually follow anyone or give any advice out, but I'm sure Will will. I can send some links to Will and he can pass them on as well.
All right. Thanks, Alex. Mengqi, how about your last advice?
The first suggestion I have is to think about what kind of job you really want to do and what kind of person you want to be. And thinking about the whole career plan, not only the first job we have. And the second suggestion I have is if you're not sure whether you're interested in what kind of job, then you can try it because a lot of jobs are very different with what you are imagining.
Perfect. Thanks, Mengqi. Maria, how are you? Final piece of advice.
So I definitely want to say that I agree very much, and that's what I was going to say as well with what what everyone said, but especially what Alex was saying about networking. It is so important. I mean, I saw it firsthand. I've seen it these 2.5 years that I've been working, and really realizing that also like you're networking here. I mean, when I joined CEID, really I didn't have zero network in this field. I came from a very different field. You really are meeting people here. Take advantage of all the opportunities that this program offers, and they're even more than what we had. I mean, now that CEID has become its own program, I mean, you have even more networking opportunities, even more great spaces to really meet people, introduce yourself, see what they're doing, talk about yourself, talk about your dissertation, et cetera, et cetera. And I would also say that take advantage of the thematic knowledge that you can build with this degree, because what I've seen really working, again, just these 2.5 years that I've been working, is that a lot of people in this field don't really specialize in education and development. They come from different fields. They might come from economics, they might come from philosophy, they might come from really different degrees. And we really are in a unique position that we're studying, if you're interested specifically to work in education and development, of course, we are studying this specific degree, and not a lot of people have it. So I even have conversations with people that they tell me, it's so great that you have actually studied this. And that's where I got like the knowledge, the thematic knowledge that I later got, and I used in the positions that I had. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Excellent. Well, I think that brings us to about the end of our time here, but I have to say I'm really excited to have you four join us. It's so excited to have our first alumni career panel. People having at this stage being able to share out what they've accomplished. Well done to all of you. I also want to thank, we've got other alumni on joining us, so it's great to see other alumni and current students, and Suzanne here from the Careers Office. So thanks, Suzanne, for joining as well. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll be in touch, and please do continue to give updates, and I hope to see you at our summer celebration town hall. All right, I think that's it for today. I'm going to stop the recording. If you want to hang around for the town hall, you're welcome to. I'll keep this open. I'm going to stop the recording now. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you for having us. Great to
Thank
be here.
you.
Yeah, cheers. I'm also going to turn my video off so I'm not big on your screen.